Hello, I'm Dr. Min Basseder, and I'm the founder and president of Basseder Applied Creativity. At Basseder Applied Creativity, our mission is to permanently change how entire organizations think so that creative thinking becomes a way of life.
From technological breakthroughs to innovative business strategies, from manufacturing to e-commerce, from telecommunications to the home computer. On World Business Review with Alexander Haig.
Welcome to World Business Review. I'm Alexander Haig. Revolutionizing how people think is our next topic for review. Here for this discussion is Dr. Min Basseder, founder and director of Basseder Applied Creativity. Welcome, Min. We're delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you, Al. It's a real pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Good. Also joining us is our industry expert, Bob Gill, president of the Product Development and Management Association. Now, Bob, there are a number of reasons why good companies fail. What's your take on this?
My take on companies failing, Al, are in two parts. First is lack of good planning, and so often is the inability to execute. Companies today in this economic environment are so short-term focused, looking on from quarter to quarter or shorter, and it's just killing us.
Now, Min, you must have an opinion on this important subject.
Yeah, and building on what Bob said, another way to put this is they become very, very complacent. Very good companies have become complacent. And what they do is they think that they can keep on doing what's working for them now and has worked in the past over and over and over again. And they fail to realize that things are changing around them very quickly, and they don't find new businesses to get into and new products to get into and new ways of doing things. They keep on polishing the old.
Well, then, how do you go about changing the way people think?
There are ways. There are ways and methods. We've never really been taught how to think differently. And we've been taught generally how to do the same things better and better, and we've become very, very efficiency-minded. And there are methods and processes and tools and techniques and systems that people can learn to communicate with each other and do more complex things, find new problems to solve, get things done much faster, but they have to learn these, and they can be learned and they can be executed very, very well.
For more on this important subject, let's go to this World Business Review field report.
Changing the way people think, especially successful businessmen and women, isn't easy. However, if success is to be continued, being complacent or resting on one's laurels just doesn't work. What is needed is to truly build a new mindset.
People who are already successful, they know they're successful because they've been able to solve problems, and problems that have an impact on their companies and themselves. And the creative problem-solving process is a systematic approach to looking at a whole array of problems and then using the knowledge of the team as well as yourself to pick the ones that will have the greatest impact and then work through toward a solution.
The idea here is that many people can see the obvious problems by poor results. Creative thinkers automatically see possibilities for improvement where things aren't broken.
CPS is a system where you can demonstrate to your whole organization what you want. It's a system that engages people. It's a system that's open, receptive to new ideas. I think it's a system that really lends itself to teaching by doing. And we do that in our training, and we do it in the application.
These seminars or workshops are designed with a hands-on approach, one that allows attendees to learn by example and literally grow with the experience.
People are impacted a great deal through a 2.5-day or a 5-day workshop because they bring to it real problems. And they're amazed that within a day, they've got real solutions to a problem they brought. And it's a better solution normally than they could come up with themselves. I think it's a way of really learning by doing and improving, even beyond the workshop itself and to the actual application.
The bottom line is that in order to survive, people and businesses need to be adaptive. In order to ensure survival and then true success, what's needed is the ability to think, live, and breathe creativity and innovation. For World Business Review, I'm Paula Melly reporting.
Now, Bob, thinking creatively is one thing, but How can someone actually apply creative thought?
Interesting. Following on to what Min said is I absolutely agree about we become complacent, doing things the way we already did. I'll give you a good example. Right within PDMA, this year here, we put in place a strategy. Rather than using a traditional strategic planning approach, top-down approach, we took a more creative approach. Our board was uncomfortable, many were uncomfortable with it, and we said, let's trust the process. We had someone facilitate it in a similar way that Min would do it, and the results were phenomenal. So it actually works, and can prove it. Min, so how do you go about helping leaders apply creative thought?
Bob, the key thing is what you talked about is involving other people. Yeah. In the PDMA, you didn't go out and hire someone to do a strategic plan for you. Exactly. Who knows more about your business than your own people? Yeah. And so what you do is you involve them. And the problem doesn't become thinking of solutions. It becomes, when you're planning strategically, what are the right questions? What are the right challenges we have in front of us? And if you let people work together and involve them with we use a facilitator approach where the person who's facilitating doesn't get into the work itself, but just leads the group. People are free to say what they think. They're looking to the future, and there's a period of divergent thought where we open up and think widely. Then there's a period of wise decision making to come down to what are the critical challenges in front of us that we have to apply. Once you've got that in place and everybody's had a chance to be heard, it's amazing how people they'll agree on what the key ones, even if it wasn't their idea, if they were heard first. And you put the structure together where this can be all seen, and it ends up being a nice structural map. You've got the group, not only have they made it themselves, they own it, but also they put a lot of creative thought into it, and you've got the people who really know the business.
Very good. Now, Min, can you give us some examples of clients that would illustrate how all this works?
One of the most fun times I've had in my life was working with the Frito-Lay Corporation in the 80s and the 90s. And the Frito-Lay Corporation was in a situation where they sensed that they were running into a bit of a standstill. They had gone through a great period of inflation during the 70s, and they were used to solving the problem of higher costs by just pricing the products higher. And a lot of people said, we can't do that forever. Pretty soon those prices are going to be so high, people are not going to want to buy. So what they did was they said, we got to do something different. And they called me in, and some of them knew the kind of work that I did. And with some good thinking ahead of time, we devised a plan where the business need would be called offsetting inflation. We get everyone targeted on that idea. We set a target that in 5 years, we would have people thinking creatively in teams, working on opportunities inside the company, rather than just accepting cost increases, that we would start doing things differently and finding creative ways to flatten costs. And the target was set that in 5 years' time, no matter what inflation was, the cost would be flat. And they accomplished that in 4 years. And the amount of money that was set was $500 million, right to the bottom line. And that was a strategy of that company. It wasn't something that we do just for fun. It was part of the strategy. Maintain their profits, and that was a major success story for us.
Min, you talk about doing things differently. Think about the future. What can you project for the 21st century? What will our CEOs need to be doing differently?
That's such a topical question. My background is Procter & Gamble, and we have now an alumni association, and we had a tremendous opportunity to get together in Cincinnati earlier this year. There were 5 people at a round table, 5 people who were CEOs of other companies, alumni of Procter & Gamble, including General Electric and 3M. And the question was posed to them along this line. And what will the leaders do? What do good leaders do in the 21st century? And the answer was, without any question, they drive change. The leaders of the 21st century will people who drive change. It's not going to be what their behaviors are like or if they're autocratic, democratic. They know how to drive change. And they know, second of all, how to engage other people in driving change. And that means also people lower on in the organization. It means how do you get things done when you don't have authority over people? You're the leader of a team. How do you get them moving and get things done? So I think the leaders of the 21st century, people say they knew how to drive change. They didn't stay with what they were doing. And a lot of people just, it's not natural for them to like change. So you get people excited about change and you set the goals for change. And then you have to have some kind of a system, some kind of a language of innovation to drive the change.
Very good. Now, what difficult problems have your clients solved actually using these methods?
There can be any kind of a problem that is important, and some, as Bob mentioned, the idea of strategic planning. A difficult problem for any company is where are we going in the future? Where's our strengths? What's happening? And defining where we're going to go. It can be product development. It can be a big mistake that a lot of people make in thinking we're all the same way. We're in such a rush. Is we're often working on the wrong problem. We run to a solution without defining the problem. And one of the real great strengths of having a language of thinking is that we can hold each other up from, wait a second, are we really sure we're working on the right problem? And I've got some interesting examples, but they might take a little long to take. But let me do it anyway. The story that I tell most often when people say, what do you do, is the story of Irish Spring, which is a soap product. And this was introduced, I was inside of Procter & Gamble doing this kind of consulting work as an internal person where I learned everything. And our competitor, Colgate, came out with a product called Irish Spring, which was an instant winner because the bar was striped. It was the first bar ever striped. And so that was interesting. But on top of that, this bar was supposed to make you feel more refreshed. And nobody had ever thought to make a more refreshing bar. So this product takes off like a rocket, and P&G's market share goes down, theirs goes up. A team was put together, and 6 months later they called me and they said, we're a bunch of failures, we want to quit, maybe you can help us. And I said, what's going on? They said, in our company, if you're number 2, you cannot go to your management and say, we've got a green stripe bar equal to Irish Spring. Too bad. Come back when you've got a better green stripe bar. They said, we've made 6 outstanding green stripe bars in the last 6 months. Every one of them equals Irish Spring in a test, but can't beat it. So we're failures. So we had a session, and what we did was we worked on problem definition. Obviously, the group had defined the problem as, how do we make a better green stripe bar? When we worked together, the question you ask is why? And the answer came out, we're trying to make people feel more refreshed. That made a new problem definition called, how might we make a more refreshing bar? That opened up things, and what happened was that out of that came a solution where we went to a product called Coast, which was a blue and white swirly bar because people thought of refreshment at the beach, white clouds, blue sky, etc. And somebody said, I go to the coast for refreshment. And that solution took about 2 hours. Yeah. But what had taken that group 6 months to do was they jumped to a conclusion as to what the problem was. Yeah.
It's interesting, Min, is that what you're really suggesting here is it's not about the creating the product, is to actually the development. It's really the upfront. So PDMA, there's been a huge amount of interest in fuzzy front end.
Yes.
Are you getting much interest in
all of a
fuzzy
sudden?
front end?
I think 2 or 3 years ago, if you said fuzzy front end, nobody knew what you were talking about. Yeah. But right now, at your conference that we had, there was about 200 people came out for that, and that is becoming a major topic of conversation. I met a fellow in the Ford Motor Company one time, a great consultant, internal, and he had a caption in front of him, and it said, the definition of basic research. Basic research is what I'm doing when I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, and we're now in a period where do you go next? What do we do next? And there's nobody to tell you. Nobody's whispering down telling you. So it's happening everywhere because people have got major growth targets being thrust upon them everywhere you go. Stretch targets that they can't meet if they're just doing the same thing, only better. So now there are new markets to go into, new products to go into, but how do you do that? We were never taught to do that. And now it's emerging that the product development process, and not only that, by the way, product development is not just an R&D process. It's everybody's got to get involved. Process. And it's like, where do we go when we don't know where we're going? And now it's being called the fuzzy front end. It's coming from many, many different directions. We've cut about as far as we can cut now. We've become more efficient. Now where do we go from here? You can't get there from here, as they say.
Min, it would be helpful to get your perspective on this question. Is that PDMA has been very responsive to the subject of the fuzzy front end. We've been now running conferences for several years. You mentioned the conference earlier this year with 200 people. So we're responding. Why do you think it's becoming such a hot topic? What's at the root cause there?
Well, I think people are now recognizing what it is. I think 2 or 3 years ago, they wouldn't have known what you meant. They would have still said, let's just push harder. Let's just push harder, and we'll set these growth targets, and we got these good managers, and they'll make it somehow. And you say, we got you tell your CEO and you tell your staff that we're going to do plus 24% this year. Yeah, but how? We're just hoping that, well, we miss it by 22%, and so we fire those people, bring more people in. It's not going to do it. So people are saying, okay, maybe there's a way. Maybe there's a way. So my phone rings. We've got people saying, well, maybe there's a way. And now they're aware that maybe there might be different kinds of thinking that they didn't learn before. And maybe. And so little by little, you get a phone call, and it says, can we talk? And then when you talk, you get this comforting feeling that there are some ways. You're pretty smart people. We just don't have a methodology for doing this, but it can be learned and we can do it.
Well, now we've reached the point where we ask our guests to give our viewers a prediction of what he sees in his industry, his business, in the near term, the next year or two. What would be your prediction for the processes you've described?
And that would be in my business, the business of teaching and consulting with people. I think we're going to get deeper and deeper into understanding what applied creativity is, as opposed to just doing some brainstorming or whatever. And I think there's going to be more research done that's really good research. Part of my life has been the researching. And the amazing thing is that as you get deeper into it and understanding it, the more interesting it becomes. And there'll be more people who are understanding the idea of good problem definition. There's going to be more and more companies not looking for just, we call it bells and whistles, or squirt guns and balloons and have some fun, but really hard thinking and where they're going with their strategies, and involving people who can consult with them along that line, and understanding that they've got to take the time to go deeply. So I think the industry is going to get more sophisticated with more people who understand that it's not an easy job to get people to think innovatively, and you can get better and better at it like you can get at anything else.
Good. Now, Bob, what is your educated view on this subject?
There's a shift going on out there in the world. We talked about the fuzzy front end, and it's called that because it was always fuzzy, not well defined. We're beginning to see at PDMA a shift towards this front end with repeatable techniques, using creativity as a process, applying more of the right side, the creative side of your brain, rather than just the logical side. I mean, that's in execution, but I really believe that we'll see more of that, and the processes will be defined and repeatable, so that now people can adopt this, and it has a long-term effect. In addition, but to make it work is going to require it be driven from top management. This is not going to be a bottoms up. So we're seeing already management struggling out there with meeting the long-term goals, and so we're seeing more senior managers, more CEOs really demanding it. So that's my guess in the next couple of years.
Now, once again, we're going to have to terminate this highly interesting and dynamic subject. But before doing so, I'd like to thank you, men, for your splendid contribution here today.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed being here. It was just great.
Very good. And Bob, as always, your contributions were indispensable.
Thanks, Al. It's great to be back.
And thank you for watching. Until next time, for World Business Review, I'm Alexander Haig.